this is going to be a heavy topic. Here recently, we've lost 2 racers. Scott Bloomquist, you see everywhere regarding his legacy and his untimely death and his legacy that he's put and what he was able to do for the sport. We've also recently lost a local racer, James Fox, here at our local racetrack, Southern Raceway, due to a medical event that he experienced on the track. And so with both of those things occurring, it really put top of mind for me. The reason why I started doing legacy planning was specifically because we are a race family, and the risks that are associated with that and the impact that being a race family has on our legacies, but also the impact that it has on our families in particular if one of us were to die. As many of you know, my name is Elizabeth Joyner. I am a legacy and business planning attorney. I do focus on my business when it comes to motorsports. So, any businesses within the motorsports industry. I am actually able to serve not in a legal capacity as an attorney, but I do work with motorsports businesses throughout the US. What I'm going to focus this conversation on today is really specifically as it relates to legacy planning and racers and why it's important for us. So, with Josh and I, we are both managers of the HTF Super Dirt Series, and then that all of our families own together the Hunterfront band. And so with that, we're like a traveling circus. We're constantly on the road. And we're constantly traveling, going from one racetrack to the other. We are also constantly together. And so just statistically speaking, if something were to happen, most likely it would happen to all of us, or at least a few of us. And so last year, during it was the Needmore and Sonoma trip, I don't know why, but I really started having a lot of mom anxiety when it came to leaving our kids at home with babysitters or with other family members. Both Josh and I were traveling for the series. Both of us were working the series events, and it just overwhelmed me of, well, what happens if we don't make it back home? Here we are in a different state. What if something happened to us and we died? Or we just became incapacitated for a really long time. We had to be in the hospital or something. Like, what would happen to our kids? So that led me into researching, exactly that. What would happen to them? And I didn't like what I found, but I was also a little surprised by what I found. Probably like many of you, I thought estate planning was really just focused on the transfers of assets from one person to another person, and that it really didn't matter and it really didn't play a part in your life unless you were rich. And we're not rich despite all the rumors. And so I really never thought that estate planning was something that my husband and I had to worry about. We're not even 40 yet. But we do have minor kids, and we do have life insurance, and we do have businesses, and we do have a legacy. And each one of us have a legacy. Each one of us have an estate. And in the basic terms, what I learned, an estate is really just your relationship that you have with everyone else. The estate is, whether it's title and your property that you own, or your estate is that legacy like we see with Scott Bloomquist, where we're having, I'm going to assume, thousands of people show up at Eldora for his memorial service. That's your legacy. That's your estate. It's how you want to be remembered, and it's how easy you want things to go for your family once you're gone. And making sure that your family is taken care of in the best way possible. I also learned that everyone has an estate plan. It's just that the government wrote that plan for you. And the only way that you can not follow through with what the government wants, and the only way to make it so that you're making that decision rather than a judge making decisions on your behalf, is if you make it legal and you put it down in writing. So going back with Josh and I, what I found was a few things. We didn't even have a will. We didn't have a trust. We didn't have any estate plan in place at all. So if something happened to he and I, then our family would have to go through a process called probate. And that process, on average, takes about 6 months to 12 months. And on average, it costs between 3 to 7% of your estate. That can be a lot of money, especially if you have minor kids and you have life insurance, because if you have minor kids, then that is going to have to go into probate and go to your estate. Now, don't come after me if you are in a particular state that has different rules, but I'm just saying here in Florida, this would have been the experience that we were looking at. Our family would have had to go through probate. Josh would not have access to any of the bank accounts that I have just in my name, and vice versa. I would not have any access to his. All that money would be frozen. Anything that was getting paid to just him or paid to just me would end up being frozen. So not only would we be in a situation if both of us died, our kids would not have access to the money, but if only one of us died, then the other one of us would not have access to that money. And again, this all depends on how things are titled, but it's something to note and be aware of. We're even a little bit more complicated in the fact that we have a blended family, meaning that I have a son that is not Josh's biological child. So what would end up happening is I wouldn't inherit everything, and he wouldn't inherit everything. Half of whatever Josh owned would end up having to go into a trust for the kids, and the judge would make that decision. The judge would decide who would be the trustee or who would be what I call a financial parent over the children, and I would have to ask permission for that money, to use that money for their behalf. I definitely didn't want to go through the rest of our lives having to ask the court permission to have access to money that is ours. In order to take care of our children. It's just not what I would want. And I wouldn't want to be in a situation in which either Josh or I were stressed out because we didn't have immediate access to really our household income. So I found that going through probate also means that creditors get first bite of the apple. So if you have any creditors, let's say you have a garage full of racing equipment and something happens to you, well, that stuff is valuable. We do know that tools, we know that race cars, it costs money, you can sell it. And if you have any creditors, it is possible that the government is going to force your family to sell all that equipment in order to pay them off. So this all goes down to I didn't like the plan the government had for us. And I'm going to assume, or at least in my experience, most people I talk to don't like the plan that the government has for them either. So I started looking at, okay, well, how do we fix this? And that's where it really came into the life and legacy planning, making sure that we had in place in writing, whether it's in a will or in a trust, exactly how we would want assets to be transferred, who we would want them to be transferred to, putting also incapacity planning. So this, again, is incredibly important to racers. If you are on the track and you get injured and you have a traumatic brain injury, would you rather be the one that is deciding who is going to be your guardian or who's going to make medical decisions for you? Or do you want hospital staff or a judge to make that decision? Again, I'm going to assume you want to make that decision. But you can only make that decision while you still have capacity to do that. It has to be in writing. And there's other formalities. Some states require 2 witnesses, some require 1. It's just something that you would have to look at your state's laws as to how to get that legally binding to make sure that you're the one putting those things in place. The other thing that we realized was not just the transfer of assets was a problem for us, not just the incapacity planning, because it is a myth. It is not absolute that your spouse gets to make those medical decisions for you. If you do not have incapacity planning, then again, it's based off of hospital policy or based off of the government. They get to decide who's going to make those decisions on your behalf. Was guardianship of our children. So if we had no plan in place, Again, we were leaving in the hands of a judge to make the decision on who's going to be the long-term guardian of our kids, who's going to be taking care of them. We're placing in the judge's decision and the judge's discretion as to who becomes the financial parent over our children if they inherit any money from us. Because kids can't inherit money outright. It needs to be placed into a trust, and a judge would have to make that decision. And we also realize that there's going to be that period of time between our death and when the judge appoints a long-term guardian, that no one's going to know who actually has authority to watch over our kids. So this is where kids protection planning becomes incredibly important, in which you have legal documents in place that say, I do not want my kids to go in foster care. I do not want my children to go into the care of strangers. Instead, here are the list of individuals and here's their contact information as to who can watch them until a permanent guardian is appointed by the court. And this also provides the opportunity for you to name individuals to make medical decisions on behalf of your kids in case they need that too. Let's say they get in the car accident with you, you pass away, your spouse passes away, but the kids are fine, but they need medical care. Who's going to make those decisions? The kids can't consent to medical care themselves. Someone else needs to step in. So this is you, again, making decisions on behalf of your family for the protection of your family while you still have the ability to do that. So with life and legacy planning, you know, it's something that no one wants to think about. You don't want to think about. And like me, a lot of us think that it just doesn't apply to us. But again, with being racers, you're constantly on the road. You are in dangerous situations. You could die. You could get severely injured. And thinking about your legacy, not just the impact you have on the people around you and the impact you have on the racing community, but also the ease and the gift that you can give your family, that if something happens to you, you're making it as seamless and easy as possible for them. So all they have to do, all they have to focus on is grieving you. All they have to focus on is your legacy, your memorial service, and they don't have to be sitting there worried that the bank accounts are frozen. They don't have to sit there and worry whether or not they're going to be able to pay the mortgage because you were the breadwinner. They don't have to sit there and worry about, well, is this house going to be my name? Or who's this house in the name? Or is the government going to force us to sell all the race car? Going to force us to sell all the tools, all of our equipment? You're putting your family in a position in which they are protected and they are taken care of, whether you're alive or whether you're dead. I understand that not everyone can afford to go to an attorney. I also believe not everyone needs to. You know, depending on what your assets are, what your family dynamics are, what your goals are, you might not need to reach out to an attorney in order to get your estate plan in place. And so because of that, I have linked down below in the description. It's an ebook that goes over some resources. It's free. So free resources on how to create your estate plan for free. This is limited just to your will and your incapacity documents, like your living will, your power of attorney, your healthcare directives, your HIPAA form. But these are at least resources that you can take a look at and see whether or not it would help your family. One thing to bear in mind, even if you just have a will, you still have to go through probate. But you know, that's something to kind of just think about how things are titled and get that conversation started between you and your partner or you and your family members as to how you want things to be transferred. But that resource is below, so you can click on that and you can download the ebook that's going to walk you through everything. I've also included in the resources below a link to the Personal Family Lawyer Attorney Directory. That's going to have a list of attorneys throughout the United States. I only work and do legacy planning for Florida families, while I do business consulting with any business throughout the US. For legacy planning itself, I only work with Florida families. You can always reach out to me too. Again, you can DM me. There's also ways, make a comment, and I can see if I can get you in touch with an attorney if you decide, after looking at the do-it-yourself estate plan ebook, that you really just want that extra help and that extra support in preparing your estate plan. I hope that you found this video helpful and maybe brought up some points that you've never thought before. I know for us, like I said, it was stuff that I didn't really think about before until I really realized how important it was for us to have an estate plan in place as, 1, parents with minor kids, 2, as business owners, and 3, as a racing family. So I hope that you found that it was also helpful for you. If you did, please leave a thumb up, comment. I try to respond to every comment that I get, so please comment, follow me on the other socials. But until next time, thank you.